also got some more worker-related laws that are going to take effect in 2020, which I'd imagine is only going to fuel that potential, at least from consumer spending standpoint, including the fact that more workers are going to be able to be eligible for overtime pay as well. How should we think about the impact that that could have?
Yeah, let me drill down on that a little bit, because Washington State enacted the most ambitious overtime rule in the nation. That is, they raised the threshold under which your salary must include overtime pay. Now, the Obama administration, when they were going out, tried to do that on a national level. It didn't happen. The Trump administration actually did follow through with the rule, but their threshold was very low. I think it's less than half of Washington State. So this is going to be a very important thing to watch. What we have here, and Contessa got us into, really a small share of what's going on in the states, is this dynamic where states experiment. They become the laboratories of policy. We've seen it with minimum wages. We're seeing it with cannabis, with sport betting. Yeah, by the way, a lot of people getting high and betting on sporting events. I don't know. That might not end well.
Jimmy, want to get your thoughts on this, especially given the fact that we do have unemployment at a, nearly 50-decade low? What does this mean for companies? What does this mean for consumers?
Well, listen, a 50-decade low, and if Goldman Sachs is right, we're going to be going to a 60-decade low. I'd like to follow up what Jared said about states being sort of these laboratories for experimentation. We're also seeing a lot of that in California, which is sort of taking the lead, trying to deal with sort of the digital economy. They have these new privacy rules which are going to go in place. Which at least for big companies will be a de facto sort of data privacy standard, and will, I think, puts more pressure on Congress to do something unless they want the states setting the rules. I know there's a lot of interest in Congress in doing something. They've been unable to figure something out. So if not this year, I imagine soon there'll be a lot more pressure to do that on a federal level.
Yeah. By the way, I think I said 50-decade. I meant 5-decade.
Yeah.
Just to clear that up.
You know what? I think I may have said 60-decade. I also meant 6-decade.
All right. Jared, I want to get your thoughts on this new privacy legislation that's set to take effect in California as well. It could have huge impacts not only on the tech sector, but companies that are collecting data in general. What does this mean not only for that state and companies operating in that state, but whether this could become regulation that finds its way across the country more broadly?
Yeah, I looked at that one with great interest as well. Look, from a consumer standpoint, I think it's quite important. There is a growing consensus, and interestingly, a bipartisan one, that we cannot allow these companies to regulate themselves. That they've got to really rein in some of their practices regarding how they handle people's data. Now, from our perspective, what does this mean to the company's profitability, their market cap? I don't think it's going to be nearly the kind of ding that some people worry about. And in fact, I would argue that absent some kind of smart regulation, we're just asking for more and more trouble from this sector. And it's also, I think, germane, again, with this kind of state-level experimentation that we're starting at a sub-national level. We'll see what works, and eventually, we've really got to regulate these data practices from a national level.
Well, we can see what happened in Europe. What happened in Europe is you saw they were supposed to hurt concentration. They actually encourage more market concentration among big players like Facebook. I'm not sure if Jared wants that. They also led to less venture capital spending on startups. So remember, there's going to be downsides to this law as well, which activists rarely talk about.
Jimmy, do you think we're going to see more face-offs between California and the federal government this year?
Yeah, you have this. You had the stuff they want to do about the gig economy. At some point, I imagine housing is going to become a bigger issue also on the federal level, given sort of the affordability issues in California. They are on the cutting edge. This is where these big tech companies, a lot of them are located. And as long as these tech companies are sort of in the spotlight, and that's going to be the case like forever, then California will be in the spotlight as well.
I would like to say something about California. So from a progressive policy standpoint, California has really been a fascinating kind of microcosm policy experiment, because they have undertaken so many of these progressive policies that you hear the left-leaning politicians in Washington talk about. And yet their unemployment rate is low, their economy is strong, their GDP growth is strong.
And you've got wildly unaffordable cities.
Yeah, the housing. You're absolutely right about that
too.
The housing thing has not been solved, and Jimmy's exactly right about that. In fact, I'd call it a housing crisis for middle and low end affordability. But I'm just saying that in terms of this policy experimentation point, California is a real. A really interesting case study for
terribly unsustainable tax system. Great model.
The economy's chugging along.